Hello, well in this film I'm going to be sewing some little leather tool pockets, and here's one of them actually. I did this one on the Singer 66, that's on the hand crank sewing machine, and I recently popped a film up showing the sorts of things you can do with that. Well, I'm now going to do a whole batch of these on my more advanced Juki machine, so I'll do some sort of GoPro type shots so you can see the sort of making process. I just thought I'd chat a little bit sort of along the way. So the background of this is basically, as you know, I'm running some leather courses, first one coming up this weekend, and that's full, I'm pleased to say. March one's actually virtually full now as well, but enjoying getting all the tools set up for those so that people have a nice little collection. And I've got little boxes, so each person can have a box and access to a good set of tools. And the thing is, you know, here's a stitch marker, for example, and as you probably know, they come with little bits, so you get extra wheels depending on the stitches, and little screwdrivers and things. So you get these little wheels that come along with them, and screwdrivers, so you can set your stitches. Anyway, I thought all these little bits are going to get lost, so that's the logic for making one of these little tool roll holders. And the idea is the tools can just drop in the little front press studded pocket, nice and secure in there, main tool out of harm's way in there, and it's just made out of scrap leather, so it really hasn't cost anything at all, but it's a good little protection, keeps everything safe. So going to knock out 8 of those. And as I say, this one I've made on the hand crank machine because I just really wanted to have a little play around and test its capability, and it does a good job. I mean, you know, if you want to make something, as I say, you do not need fancy kit. For the remaining 7, I'm going to go on to my industrial machine, and really just because it's quicker. I've got quite a lot on at the moment, so I want to push through quite quickly. Now, the reason why the industrial machine is quicker, to summarise, is because it's got things like a reverse, so there's no turning your material around, and it takes the M-type bobbins, so they're large bobbins, they carry a lot of thread. The motor is okay, you can go faster than hand sewing, so that's quicker as well, I suppose. So there are some very sort of obvious differences. The differences are all really quite marginal when it comes down to it. So for what I call a flat sew, where it's not complicated, there aren't great seams to climb, the little hand crank is perfectly okay. And I think that's really one of the things I just want to say in this film is, if you're doing just the odd bit of sewing and it's a lot of fairly flat where you're not having to climb heavy seams and things like that, the hand crank will probably do the job for you. If you're doing a lot of complicated stuff where you've got bulky seams and you're having to climb seams and you've got volume to do, then you probably do want the full-blown industrial machine. Anyway, I'll get some of these cut out and then get machining. Well, I have lots of scraps of leather, and I'm just cutting out on my cutting table using a rotary knife and a cutting rule. I'm using those scissors, they're actually serrated jaw scissors, and the idea is that the leather doesn't slip in the jaw of the scissors. So if you're doing quite a lot of leather cutting, have a look at serrated jaw ones. There's a very, very fine serration on the jaw of those, but it does make it a bit easier. Now on to dyeing the edges, just to make them look a bit more presentable. I say it's all fairly rough and ready really, but you know, it makes it look, as I say, a bit more as I'd like it to look. Those hole punches on the workbench there are double lever ones. They do help your hands. I've popped a film up on those, and here I'm just gluing on the little pockets on the front. So I'm just using a bit of leather glue, 5-inch leather glue, and sticking them down, and it will help with the sewing. So it keeps it in position. And now I'm riveting on the poppers, and I'm using a little rivet tool to do that. Making fairly quick work, just using the basic tools on the anvil. So you will have seen this beast in other films, but it's a flatbed machine and it's industrial, so it's very powerful, a big sort of motor behind it. And as I mentioned, it takes quite large bobbins, so you're not having to constantly reload. Just to show you the bobbin difference, that's the bobbin out of a Singer domestic machine. That's the bobbin out of an industrial machine. So I put them side by side. So you can probably imagine that an industrial machine can take a lot more thread on its bobbin, and that obviously means less bobbin changes and you can keep going a lot longer, so it's quite a bit quicker from that point of view. The other fairly obvious things is there are things like a drop down guide on the industrial, so you can get quite nice accurate seams quite quickly. You could put a guide on the hand crank machine, no reason why not, but it's probably easier, good lighting. Again, you can put proper light on the hand crank. I'm not knocking the hand crank, I'm just saying there are some subtle differences with a large industrial machine if you're doing a lot of sewing. So anyway, there you are. I'll get sewing on here and get them pushed through. Quick diversion for a minute, just to say, really pleased to pick up a saddler's clam. Now, I've made these and they turn out very nicely when you make them. I picked this one up for next to nothing, simply because it was all broken down here and it had a couple of huge knots in it, which I think people felt it looked very cracked. So what I've done actually, I've put in new brass screws down the bottom to secure it, given the whole thing a nice sand French polished, realigned the jaws, and I've put in a couple of biscuit joints into where the cracks were. So it took a little bit of work, but it probably only took me about 40 minutes or so, and I've got this lovely nice clam. I've also lined it with leather in the jaws. But just a quick diversion, another little tool I've been sort of knocking up. So all these bits and pieces for the leather courses. Anyway, back to making the tool holders. So I'm sewing on one of the pockets here, just keeping the flap out of the way, sewing the lower pocket, and then over I go on the flap itself, and then just trimming up. Well, job done. I've got these finished. Didn't take very long, but I'll just show you what they're about. So, over stitch wheel, little sort of wallet there to keep it safe, stop the teeth getting damaged or hurting anyone, and then a little popper on the front and a little pocket for the bits, and they sit in there quite nice and happily. So again, a bit out of harm's way, and also they won't get lost in there. Push them right down. All done, and done quite quickly, and that's all just with scrap leather. So again, hasn't really cost me anything to speak of. Yes, the poppers I've just set them manually actually, using very simple rivet snap. So you don't need complicated tools for doing that. All I would say is when you set these poppers, make sure you've got the right size of little snap tools, because they do vary in diameter, and you'll find some of them are wider and narrower than others, and you just for successful poppering you need to make sure that you get the right diameter of tip for the popper that you're doing. These are quite large poppers, so I used a larger one, and then you get a nice even sort of burr over. But if you use one that's too small, you'll end up with a bit of a mucky burr, and it won't sort of snap shut nice and easily. So just that's all you need, but just make sure you can get them in sets so you're using the right one for the application. So there you are. Kept me out of mischief for a little bit. That's another 8 done. I think I've probably made about 80 various little tool rolls, tool covers and what have you now, all out of scraps. Haven't cost anything at all to speak of really, and it means everything's nicely secure, safe and protected in its cases. Anyway, I hope you quite enjoyed that one, and thanks very much for watching. Bye!